Picasso is perhaps synonymous to most of us with change or innovation. He can't be typed to a school or technique. He's expressed himself in every medium: oil, charcoal, tempera, bronze, now ceramics. There are the paintings of his earlier still lifes which reflect the sadness and grief he found at 20. And there are the more detailed and complex works of his Cubist and Surrealist periods. You will hear today the opinions and words of 5 people. First, Pablo Picasso.
Cubism is no different from any other school of painting. The same principles and the same elements are common to all. The fact that for a long time Cubism has not been understood, and that even today there are people who cannot see anything in it, means nothing.
And Gertrude Stein, the writer and friend.
In the 19th century, painters discovered the need of always having a model in front of them. In the 20th century, they discovered that they must never look at a model. I, Gertrude Stein, remember very well. It was between 1904 and 1908 when people were forced, by us or by themselves, to look at Picasso's drawings. His drawings were not of things seen, but of things expressed. In short, they were words for him, and drawing always was his only way of talking, and he talks a great deal.
And Jaime Cervantes, the poet and lifelong friend of Picasso.
I remember watching him work on his paintings. He was so wholly absorbed in what he was doing that he forgot his surroundings. He surrenders himself to his art, and the silence around him is so great that the ear perceives the sound of the passage of his brush across the canvas. It's his reason for living.
H.D. Cornweiler, the European art dealer and associate of Picasso for over 50 years.
There are many kinds of cubism. Oh, synthetic cubism and analytic cubism, and it is no use to explain them. I can't explain them. The artists like Picasso, being realists, were shocked to see that people did not realize what they depicted. These new steps gave painting a liberty never seen before, and it wasn't only in painting. His close friends, James Joyce, Gertrude Stein, and Arnold Schoenberg, in their arts, too, there's a similar break-from tradition. They all wanted to tell more of what they saw than anyone else did before them.
And finally, a voice which will serve as a critic, his views being based upon the writings of Alfred Barr, the noted American authority on Picasso.
He's responsible only to himself. He works out of some inner compulsion. In effect, he says, take it or leave it, I can and will paint in no other way. And in a world in which social pressures tend to restrict the freedom of the exceptional individual, Picasso's art assumes a significance far beyond its artistic importance.
Above all, Picasso is preoccupied with vision. And therefore, it's fitting that a visual record of his work should be presented on Camera 3. By doing so, perhaps we can gain some insight into one of the most controversial men of our time.
Well, he was in Paris, and all paintings had an influence on him. I do not mean that by all this he was less Spanish. The Spanish temperament was very real inside in him. The sadness of Spain, the monotony of Spanish coloring, struck him forcibly. Because one must not forget, Spain isn't like the other southern countries. It is not colorful. There is no red or green, not at all. Spain is oriental. Women there wear black more often than colors. The earth is dry and golden color. The sky is blue, almost black. The starlight nights are black too, so that everyone and everything is black.
I had been told about an Andalusian lad who painted, sketched, and I don't know what else. A friend of mine had seen him making notes at a cafe concert in Barcelona and told me it would be worthwhile to meet him. Now, among Barcelonians of my class, the word Andalusian is a jingling of bells which arouses curiosity because at home they never pronounced it without a grimace of repulsion. An Andalusian to them means a bullfighter, a gypsy, a wise guy who drinks and dances Flemish dances. Pants tight at the belt, short vest, Cordoban felt hat, and cock and bull stories. However, I conquered my prejudice and met Picasso.
Oh, what he liked was the circus. he could be friendly with the jugglers and the acrobats. We went to the circus every Friday night. And afterwards we went to a poor nightclub, Le Goéland. Ah, the poor, poor girls. I thought afterwards that it reminded Picasso of the poor girls he had seen in similar places, at Barcelona, when he was very young.
Picasso took many of his finest themes from the nostalgic, vagrant world of the Sikhs forains, the strolling acrobats and harlequins, lonely, pathetic figures pursuing an eternal dream of better things, perhaps reflecting his own nomad life. For the theme of the harlequin has always remained in his art, no matter how abstract it becomes. This family of saltimbanque is the largest painting of his first decade as an artist. He assembles a number of circus characters who appear in scores of drawings, prints, and lesser paintings of the early 1900s. Yet his art is changing here, for this final work of this period is without the drama or sermon of his earlier canvases.
Why cling desperately to an art that has already fulfilled its promise? There are miles of paintings done in the manner of, but it is rare to find a young man working in his own way. To repeat art is to run counter to spiritual laws, escapism.
Like the rest of us, he breathed an air infested with northern modernism. Nothing counted except the fashion from Paris, and sculptors and artists, like dressmakers, had no alternative but to cross the frontier. So Picasso went to Paris, for he has always spent his life taking leaps and always forward. One should not be too shocked by a picture of his which shatters all accepted convention, for before long he will produce others even more radically different, and these, by shocking us still more profoundly, will serve to make us appreciate for the first time those we were about to reject.
As his arts dealer, I knew he was working on something very different in 1906. I remember going to his studio at Derain. It was in the spring of 1907. We saw this picture, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Derain and I shook our heads at him. Oh, what have you done?
When Picasso showed it to me and asked, how do you like it, I told him, well, I'll get used to it.
This picture inaugurated the Cubist movement. Almost immediately, fury broke loose in the world of European painting.
Picasso commenced, and little by little came the picture, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. And when there was that, it was too awful.
As we see it now, the canvas, with its 5 stiffly posed nude maidens, is a combination of African design and expressionist color, and the profiles are drawn upon frontal faces, devices which later became a commonplace of Cubism.
I remember Chouquin, who had so much admired the painting of Picasso, was at my house and said, "What a loss for French art."
This canvas did away with perspective and with almost all representational elements. He broke up all natural forms into a semi-abstract design of shifting planes. He deliberately set his sights at the human figure, above all, the face. Then he reorganized the forms along the lines he fancied.
They speak of naturalism in opposition to modern art. I should like to know if anyone has seen a natural work of art. Nature and art being two different things cannot be the same. Through art, we express our conception of what nature is not.
Cubism was the name given to that movement in painting which began in Paris around 1910 and spread through the world. The leaders were first Picasso and then Georges Braque. They disagreed violently with the traditional view that painting should be a literal or realistic representation of nature. The subject was secondary, unimportant. It could be presented in terms of intersecting cubes, cylinders, and other geometric forms. It might lose its identity, but the beauty and meaning of a work rests in the work itself and not in the subject with which it begins.
Many think that Cubism is an art of transition, but arts of transition do not exist. Cubism is an art dealing primarily with form, and when a form is realized, it is there to live its own life.
Cubism seemed to Picasso to be primarily an art of form. It was secondarily an art of representation. It was never purely abstract. Always there were vestiges of nature, whether a landscape, a figure, or a still life. These vestiges of nature were important, for they revealed the point of departure in this new art. They supplied a rope which anchored the picture to common reality.
Mathematics, trigonometry, chemistry, psychoanalysis, music, and whatnot have been related to Cubism to give it an easier interpretation. All this has been pure literature, not to say nonsense, which brought bad results, blinding people with theories.
Cubism was not meant to shock people. No, no, no. It wasn't meant to shock. You see, in this period, philosophy was very close to Cubism. What had really happened, one was thinking of rights. One could think it was politically quiet, no wars. One found that really painting is, well, a kind of writing, not the imitation mirror of outer world. It is invention of emblems which represent the outer world.
Picasso worked enormously, as he always worked, but everyone was gay. This gaiety lasted until he left Montmartre. After that, not one of them was ever so gay again. Their gaiety then was a real gaiety.
Picasso has been a receptacle for emotions that come from all over. From the sky, from the earth, from a scrap of paper, from a passing shape. He goes through states of fullness and evaluation, the whole secret of his arts. He has been affected by all schools of painting. After he went to Rome to paint scenery for the Ballet Russe, he turned from pure form to a sensitive, almost classic style.
He painted with no idea of time. And once, when we were discussing the dates of his pictures, and I was saying to him that all could not have been painted during 1 year, Picasso answered, "You forget. We were young, and we did a great deal in a year." He looked at the pictures and said, "People will not see the pictures. They will only see the legends of the pictures, the legends that the pictures have created. A picture lives by its legend, nothing else."
A guitar. Do you know that when I painted my first guitars, I'd never had one in my hands? With the first money they gave me, I bought one. And after that, I never painted another. People think the bullfights in my pictures were copies from life, but they are mistaken. I used to paint them before the bullfight so as to make some money, to buy my ticket.
Picasso once told me that he who created a new art form is forced to make it ugly. For in the effort to create, the intensity always produces a certain ugliness. And only those who follow can make of it a beautiful thing because they know what they're doing, the form having already been invented. But the inventor, because he does not know what he's going to invent, inevitably creates an art that must have its ugliness.
Oh, the circus. Even years later, he remembered the circus. He painted his son Paul as the characters from the circus. He always loved to paint his children, taking their first steps in costumes or asleep.
It was 1899 in Barcelona, and he worked in a room above a corset shop. In his spare time, he would go downstairs to observe the gestures of the operators and the motions of the machines. Then he would return to his room and sketch or paint without let-up. To this day, I remember him lost in a mountain of papers.
In the paintings of his neoclassic period, there is always the touch of Rome and ancient Greece. Yet the modern concepts are not dissociated. He brought this period to an end with the three graces. Yet despite the almost classic technique, the painting is virtually colorless. And the Cubist facial design is evident. The profile across the frontal face.
In Paris, he went at least once a week to the circus, the Cirque Medrano, and there he felt very flattered because he could be friendly with the clowns, the jugglers, the horses, and the riders.
In his attempt to derive effect from such geometric forms as circles, squares, and angles, Picasso has taken liberties with the forms and the musical instruments, breaking them up to accentuate movement. In The Three Musicians, you may distinguish three men from left to right, playing a violin, a clarinet, and an accordion.
He paints what he alone sees, an eye, or just one feature of a face, and the rest is a reconstruction from memory. And so the cubism of Picasso was an effort to make a picture of these visible things, and the result was disconcerting for him and for the others. But what else could he do?
He painted two versions of this subject. In both paintings, there is a Piero, a Harlequin, and a monk seated at a table. In this, the effect is more somber than in the other. These strange masks give the composition a solemn, even a sinister quality. Just as the family of Saltimbanque concludes a period of his life, so does The Three Musicians. The rectangular cubism will become more plastic, more abstract.
He is impressionable to the highest degree, receptive to everything, to a flower, to a scrap of paper which he finds on the floor. He is always open to contact. The rest he derives from his endless energy, from his senses, from his recollections. And none of his ways of expression remain long or become a chronic illness. To him, work is pleasure. The nuisance is to have to live in order to keep on working, to go calling on the art dealers to market his paintings.
Picasso was influenced by all art, African, French, and Spanish. But he always saw something else, another reality. His cubism came about because the 19th century had exhausted its need of having a model. The truth that things seen with the eyes were the only real things had lost its significance.
Picasso has always been eager to try his hand at any form of expression, and with astonishing results. In The Girl Before the Mirror, he took nature for a guide and transformed the bodies from one state to another without impairing the vital character of the original. A metamorphosis. That is Picasso, reassembling nature in his own design.
These paintings were a kind of narrative of the life of man in terms of what he ate and drank and loved and could not part with.
But of what use is it to say what we do when everybody can see it if he wants to?
So the 20th century is not the same as the 19th century. And it is very interesting knowing that Picasso has never seen the earth from an aeroplane. That being of the 20th century, he inevitably knew the earth is not the same as in the 19th century. He knew it. He made it. Inevitably, he made it different. And what he made is a thing that now all the world can see. When I looked at the earth from an aeroplane, I saw all the lines of cubism made at a time when not any painter had ever gone up in an aeroplane. I saw there on the earth the mingling lines of Picasso coming and going, developing and destroying themselves. Yes, I saw, and once more I knew, that a creator is contemporary. He understands what is contemporary, and the 20th century is a century which sees the earth as no one has ever seen it. The earth has a splendor that it has never had. And as everything destroys itself in the 20th century and nothing continues, so then the 20th century has a splendor which is its own. Picasso is of this century, and he has the strange quality of an earth that no one has ever seen. So then, Picasso has his splendor. Yes, Picasso has his splendor.